Okay, everybody, on this video, we're going to talk about the Electoral College. And one thing about the Electoral College is I know it's a really difficult thing to try to understand. Um, this has been in place for years, right? And there's still people that don't understand how this works. And honestly, it's probably intentionally made that way. So we have an indirect way of electing our president. So remember, the Electoral College is a process, not a place. Our founding fathers, or the people that developed the Constitution, use it kind of as a compromise between the election of the president by a vote of Congress and election of the president by a popular vote of qualified citizens. And we'll have to really emphasize that qualified citizens part. All right, so one of the things that came out of the development of the Electoral College was the fact that the founders wanted wise and educated men to choose the president. In a sense, kind of practicing that elite system where you're having decisions made by a small few, kind of going along with that elite theory that we've been talking about. Okay, so the Electoral College consists of 538 electors. In order to become president, you need 270 votes to win. Now, look at that 538. That's an even number. So, hypothetically, in a really, really probably far-fetched scenario, the way the Electoral College is set up, it is possible that you might have a 269 to 269 vote, right? So that's 538. If it was an odd number, it would be a little bit easier. But remember that the way these votes are allocated are that the states are entitled to the amount of electors which are equal to the numbers that they have as far as the House of Representatives, plus 2 for your senators. Okay, so if you're in California, we have 53 members of the House. You have 2 senators. So Congress. That is our representation. So our Electoral College votes will be 55 here in California. And we'll look at a map toward the end that kind of will try to explain all this. Under the 23rd Amendment, the District of Columbia is allocated 3 electors. And there's just been a decision by the House of Representatives made today I'm recording this on Friday the 26th, that wanted to grant the District of Columbia statehood. That would definitely change the representation in the Senate. And in that, it would add 2 senators to the 100 that we already have, which would bring it to 102. But the District of Columbia already has 3 allocated electors. This is the article that says that shows in the Constitution where the Electoral College was developed. Now, here's the key part. The Electoral College calls for political parties to nominate electors at their state political conventions each year. Each candidate will have their unique slate of potential electors as a result of this part of the selection. So, looking forward to November of 2020, President Trump is going to have, and we're going to use California as an example, President Trump is going to have 55 electors in California, which are nominated by the Republican Party of California. Joe Biden will have 55 electors. These electors are going to be nominated by the Democratic Party of California. And remember, each state's political party will determine who they want to be electors. The Libertarian Party, remember the 3rd biggest party here in the United States, will also at their nominating convention select 55 electors to represent them in the Electoral College, right? So each political party has electors that are nominated in a state, and usually these officials or these electors are elected officials, people who lead in the party, or people who might have a personal or a political affiliation with the presidential candidate. Obviously, they need to be in good standing with the party. And one thing to understand is that the parties aren't just going to nominate anybody. They're going to nominate people that they can trust. On election day, we as citizens go out and vote, right? We vote in the popular vote. And by each state, whoever wins the popular vote will win that state's number electoral college votes. So if and this will probably happen, I'm gonna, I'm not. It's not too far-fetched to say this, but I believe Biden's gonna win California. So when Biden wins California, I'll be very, very surprised that Trump wins California. But you never know. When Biden wins California, he's gonna receive 55 electoral college votes, right? And then when the electors go to the Electoral College meeting, which usually happens in December of each presidential election year, they'll cast their votes for the Democratic candidate. Now, the winning candidate in each state, except in Nebraska and Maine, which has proportional distribution of electors, is awarded all of the state's electors. So it's an all or nothing win, right? So even if you win by one vote, you get all of that state's Electoral College votes. Nebraska and Maine are a little bit different, and I want you to look at the map when we get there. They're each carved up because they use a unicameral house in those two states. The state winner receives 2 elector votes, and the winner of each congressional district receives 1 elector. So what basically is saying that in Nebraska, for example, Nebraska has, I believe, 5 electoral college votes. If you win the popular vote in Nebraska, you'll win 2 electoral college votes. But also, there are 3 congressional districts in Nebraska. So if you win the popular vote in that congressional district, you also win 1 more electoral college vote. And so on. This happens in Maine also. And we'll look at the map in real time to see what happened in 2016 and also to see what the predictions are for 2020. Now, say for instance, I'm a member of the Democratic Party here in California, and Joe Biden wins the popular vote here in California. There's no constitutional provision or a federal law that requires me to vote according to how the popular vote voted. So, for instance, there are some state laws which we'll look about it in a bit, as some state laws require electors to cast their votes according to the popular vote. So there's 2 kinds of categories: electors which are bound by state laws and those that are bound by political parties. So we'll look at this in a minute. It's really rare for electors to disregard the popular vote by voting for the person in the opposite party. Usually these electors will be people who have some importance within the party and were chosen based on their loyalty. So you can imagine that somebody who is a part of the Democratic Party here in California and is nominated as an elector really is not going to go to the Electoral College and vote for Trump. I mean, it's possible to happen. There are some ramifications that could happen here in California, but for the most part, you're going to be alienating the party and you might be expelled. But also, kind of throughout our history as a nation, more than 99% of electors have voted as pledged. Now, if you are in the states that are listed here, you are required by law to vote per the popular vote in your state. So as we can see in California, if I am a Democratic elector that's nominated by the California Democratic Party, and Joe Biden wins the popular vote here in California, I could conceivably still go to the Electoral College and vote for Donald Trump. Now, what would happen if I did that? Now, there's a state law in California. It's a civil code or election code 6906 here in California. That little symbol in front of the 6906 stands for code. Basically what that is, it's a civil punishment here. So I could conceivably be fined. I don't know the amount of fine. I couldn't really find out, but there is a fine involved if I vote outside what my legal requirement is. If you could see in some of these other states, I think in New Mexico, it's a law, so there is the violation is a 4th degree felony, and every time you hear felony, that's a pretty serious charge. Look at Michigan. If you vote against what the popular vote is, that vote will be canceled out and you'll be replaced. Now, if we look at, here's some other states that have requirements. Look at Washington, that's $1,000 fine. And you can see the other states. What is it? South Carolina is also a replacement and a criminal sanction or a punishment. So yeah, definitely you can get us some trouble here. Now, if we look at these states have no legal requirement. So if you live in Arizona and you're an elector, you live in Kentucky, you're an elector, you live in West Virginia, you're an elector, you can pretty much vote for whomever you want. So another thing I'm willing to kind of bet my house on is that Joe Biden would win New York, right? So New York, Joe Biden wins the popular vote. The New York Democratic Party elects or nominates electors. An elector goes to the Electoral College, which is held in December, and cast their vote for Donald Trump. And that is totally legal in that state. So kind of a little bit of a wacky situation that we have here. These last people that we're talking about that have no legal requirement, they're called faithless electors. And that's become a pretty popular term now because the Supreme Court has been trying to determine, and actually, let me back up. The court system has been trying to determine whether or not the concepts of faithless electors should be proper or not. And we'll see in the next couple of years maybe any type of case law that takes away the ability to be a faithless elector or gives you the ability and maybe takes away some of these laws if you want to be a faithless elector. Hope that makes sense. But yeah, these have no legal requirements. We'll go and look at this in a minute. If we take a look at a website, and I want you guys to take a look at this website. It's called 270 to Win, right? And if you look at this, you can see the Electoral College allocation. Obviously, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, but she didn't win the Electoral College vote. A lot of the things that were involved with the Electoral College is to give small states maybe the same chance to win an election as, you know, candidates not needing, just focusing on the big states, because you can see conceivably somebody could win the Electoral College by just carrying 13 to 14 states. You know, now New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, California, you know, and so on. As you can see here, this is Trump won 304 Electoral College votes. Hillary Clinton won 227. If you go and look at the current one, you can kind of play with these things and try to maybe predict what's going to happen in November of 2020. These states that are deep blue are, you know, they're already saying that those people, the Democrats are going to win that state. The ones in the deep red are saying that the Republicans are going to win those states. The ones in the light red mean that they're leaning Republican, but it's possible that they might vote Democrat, the same as the light blue, saying they may vote Democrat, but possibly could swing Republican. So the most important states in here too are the states that are in the beige color. These are called toss-up states or swing states. These are the states that are going to determine the election. So if we say that Arizona is going to be red, we say Wisconsin, and according to polling, Wisconsin is going to be blue. We'll say Pennsylvania is going to be blue. We'll say North Carolina is going to be red. And you know what? Even with Florida already still in play, we already have the 278 Electoral College votes needed for the Democrats to win. Look at Maine and Nebraska and Maine. Maine has 4 Electoral College votes, the 2 votes, and then the votes that are broken up by districts. Same with Nebraska. You see that right here. So, I mean, there's a bunch of ways that you could get into this and try to figure out or make a prediction. This website's good, and another website called 538 is a pretty good website to tinker with and probably try to figure out who's going to be the president. So you look at that, and you can determine by playing with the states. Now, other than, well, in the interest of saving time and not boring you guys, there is a possibility where you can get 269 to 269. Let's see. I don't know if I could do it now by just sitting here and thinking about it. But if we ever get into that, like, kind of that nightmare scenario, take 6. Let's just say for argument's sake, Nevada goes. There you go. I did it quickly. There's your nightmare scenario. 269 to 269. Now, what would happen if this event takes place? House of Representatives would determine who the president would be. So remember, you need 270 to win, so it's possible to get 269 against 269 just because it's an even number, and how some of these states have, where you could split the Electoral College votes. So I hope this makes sense. What I'll actually do is when we come up in the week with discussing this with our group chat, our group session, we'll actually go over this a little bit more, and we'll answer some questions with regards to that. But I just wanted to show you how this is all set up. If we look at historical elections, and we'll do this again when we meet up so we can really get a handle on this. If you look at some of the historical elections, here is 2016. Here's 2012 when Obama originally won. You can see the states that Obama won. He beat Romney by 5 million votes in the popular vote. Barack lost a little bit of support in 2012. In 2008, he beat McCain by 10 million votes and won pretty handily in the Electoral College. A lot of you might be too young to remember this, but this was a nightmare scenario that happened and I'm not saying because who got elected, I'm saying just because there was a time in 2000 that we didn't know who the president was going to be. You could see Al Gore beating George Bush by 500,000 votes, but losing by 5 Electoral College votes. A lot of people talk about Florida, and we'll talk about Florida when we have our little group discussion. But if you really look at the thing that really hurt Gore was he lost Tennessee, and that's his home state. So if Gore would have won Tennessee, he would have won the election, right? And who knows how our history might have changed there. But if you look at that, you could see the history of the Electoral College. Here's Bill Clinton, his re-election, Bill Clinton's first election. This is George H.W. Bush, and this is Ronald Reagan, and this is what we call a tail kicking. Walter Mondale only received 37 million votes compared to Reagan's 54, but look at Reagan wiped him out with 525 Electoral College votes, and Walter Mondale won Minnesota, which was his home state. So not good for Walter Mondale. If you look at the 72 election, this is Richard Nixon against George McGovern. Richard Nixon won by almost 20 million votes. And look at George McGovern only won Massachusetts, which is a traditionally Democratic state, and D.C., which has 3 Electoral College votes. All right. Like I said, we'll talk more about this on our group video because I think it's very important to talk about. And if you have any questions, just let me know. All right.